stream is working on YouTube. Okay, so welcome to week 2 of this training course. Wonderful quote there to start off with from Neil Armstrong. Opportunities will be available to you that you cannot imagine. I could not agree with that sentiment more. Now, over the course of this evening's training, we are going to focus on a couple of different areas, mostly down to meditation and expanded consciousness techniques. And I'm going to go into quite a lot of detail tonight. I'm going to be concentrating largely on the neuroscience around this. I'm going to be bringing in, I'm going to be looking at a few areas of sorry, I'm going to be concentrating on things like energy work. I'm going to be looking at Indigenous meditation and looking at what is the similarities between expanded consciousness techniques by things like the Native American Indians, the Aborigine, might touch on the Dogon. I'm going to try and explain to you what energy work is, why it's important, and what it's trying to achieve. And then I'm going to talk to you about the science behind all of this. And I'm going to touch on something that I think is actually really critically important for the community tonight, which is I think we've had a sort of breakthrough moment where we've kind of realized why certain people are able to get contact more than others. And I'm going to share that piece of information. So that's a theory that's emerged based on a number of scientific papers that have been published. So to kick off, so to pick back off where we left off last week, basically looking at what are expanded consciousness techniques. So once again, if we go back to okay, you have to bear with me, my screen's decided to freeze. So if we consider expanded consciousness techniques, we frame our view of the world based on the 5 senses, so touch, taste, sight, smell, sound. But if you've had a conversation with half of the CE5 teams in the UK and many others around the world, you'll realize that people that are having experiences as a result of CE5 are having experiences that actually fall outside of the 5 senses. And you can perceive these when you genuinely achieve an expanded conscious state. So I'm going to try and stay away from words this evening that carry an awful lot of baggage. So words like psychic phenomenon, things like that. And I'm going to try and reframe this, as I've mentioned before, in sort of real world physics. You have to forgive me, there we go, got that working again. So bear with me one moment. Okay, so we are going to I'm so sorry, I've just had to admit somebody else. So going back to this, so expanded consciousness techniques. During expanded conscious state, individuals may experience a deep sense of connection with the world around them, a heightened sense of perception of their own thoughts and emotions, greater sense of clarity, and it can lead to a sense of transcendence, unity, and a sense of oneness with the universe. So really, this is what CE5, the CE5 protocol is effectively trying to put a group into an expanded conscious state. But as I covered last week, you have a personal obligation. The CE5 protocol is a one-size-fits-all guided meditation. But it's not the only way to achieve an expanded conscious state, and your obligation is to yourself and to find out what works for you. So this next slide is really dealing with basically the idea that there are, and I'm not going to talk too much about this evening, but the fact is that brainwave activity, there are different types of brainwave activity, and these different types, delta waves, theta waves, alpha waves, beta waves, and gamma waves, and this has all been assessed using an EEG. So this is credible neuroscience here. Now, in terms of how far you have to go to achieve CE5, well, at the moment we're in a strange place as far as we cannot answer that question conclusively. But it is highly likely that you would need to be potentially at alpha level to achieve that. But again, this is a very subjective area at this point in time. There's a fantastic talk on the CE5 UK YouTube channel called, I think it's Zen and the Art of Meditation, given by a wonderful individual who's been running CE5 Bristol for years, called Jamie Basil. Jamie's actually a trained hypnotherapist as well. He's done a lot of work on ADHD for adults and children alike. And he's done an awful lot of work about the different types of brainwave activity and in relation to expanded conscious states. So if you get a chance and you want to go and learn a little bit more about this, even though this is an area which is, again, like many of the other things we're going to talk about tonight, is being increasingly researched, but it's not well understood enough. And we as a community probably do need to start understanding this. Now, in the Northwest, Hollywood has built a very good relationship with the Monroe Institute. We're going to come on and talk about the Monroe Institute later on, Robert Monroe and the work that he did with the Gateway process. But Holly has got a webinar with the Monroe Institute on the 6th of April. I'd really recommend you do that, because it is the sort of thing. The Monroe Institute are the neuroscience guys and girls that are likely to come out to the team with the right kit to be able to actually measure the brainwave activity during a CE5, and that's probably the type of science that we need to be embracing next. So I'm not gonna this next tab is I'm not gonna concentrate on it too much. In fact, I might actually. I'm not sure if I'm going to turn this. So yeah, it's jumped forward a few, unfortunately. But this is covering some of the papers that I wanted to draw attention to. So this is in reference to last week. I touched on it very briefly. The idea that first of all, neuroscience is effectively telling us that there's a significant increase in cognitive brain function as a direct result of meditation. These 4 specific papers that here are dealing with the effects on cognitive brain function of people that meditate, and these are all demonstrating that there is a clear increase. One of the papers I've read has suggested a 23% increase. However, it's entirely possible that there's more than that. Now, it's not just I'm so sorry, this is really quite annoying what's happening with these slides tonight. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because what is also being suggested in many of these papers is the fact that, and this is it, let's just try and pause it there. So people that meditate regularly are able to access 5 or 6 areas of the brain that people that do not meditate cannot. These are represented here. So the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, the hippocampus, the insula, the amygdala, and also then the DMM, which is a network of brain regions. So they're able to access this, but what is linked to the fact that they're able to access this is the fact that there is a growing and consistent evidence, and the consistent findings are that people who meditate tend to have an increased grey matter density in regions of the brain associated with attention, emotion regulation, and sensory processing. So these particular areas. So basically, what that means is, with brain tissue, grey matter is the brain tissue that is responsible for processing thoughts, dealing with instructions, and people that meditate, they are clearly developing an increase in grey matter. So this is now I haven't the papers that I wanted to cite here. I'm not sure if I've cut and pasted them in onto this next slide or not. Yeah, here we go. Well, these ones specifically are the evidence to support that previous slide. So these papers are done by neuroscientists, psychiatrists that have been using MRI imaging to look at the areas of the brain following meditation. So really, I've taken a very long way to say that the reason this is all so important is because meditation and expanded consciousness techniques actually do make you more intelligent. That is supported by the neuroscience. This is not woo-woo. This is actual, concrete, verifiable scientific fact. Even if you don't make contact with extraterrestrials, your involvement with this movement, whether you're organizing a team or just taking part in one, is going to make you more intelligent. So that is all, that is black and white and supported by the science. So moving on, what are the other types of expanded consciousness technique? Now we're going to spend a bit of time in a minute talking about energy work, and we're going to talk about. Now I'm not really this evening going to touch on specific meditations that fall under things like Hindu, Buddhism, Taoism, Western guided, Sikh, Kabbalah. They are all fairly well trodden paths. I mean, I think the basic point from last week, and I want to echo again tonight, is the fact that you've got an obligation to just try these things, try them out. They all work. A lot of people swear by Zen, Buddhism, meditation. If you speak to many other people throughout the UK movement, swear in terms of transcendental meditation, which is like kind of like a mantra meditation. There's something I'm going to come on and talk to you a lot about in a minute, which is the gateway process and hemisync. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about Wim Hof, Joe Dispenza, and touch on briefly hypnosis. But the point I wanted to make generally about some of these other meditations is this is separate to doing the sort of CE5 protocols through either Dr. Greer's app or our app, is that you get out and try these things. This is it. What you're embarking on now is a deeply personal journey, and you'll meet a ton of people who'll say, "Oh, I do this," or "I do this. You should really try this." You've just got to find what works for you. The thing is that it's very difficult to put into words the feeling of how it actually feels physiologically when you genuinely know you've connected. And that's what you're trying to do. So you're trying to put yourself in an expanded conscious state, and you're trying to connect. Now, the major principle theory behind CE5 is that we're all connected to some sort of universal consciousness field. I mean, it really doesn't matter what you want to call it. It has a number of different names. This is a concept which is alluded to in I think Wim Hof talks about it. Joe Dispenza definitely does. It's mentioned within the gateway process. All of those religions you're seeing there. Tao Chi Yoga and Reiki, this forms a fundamental part of all of those as well. There are many, many different names for this, but effectively, I'm slightly more comfortable when I'm framing this all under quantum mechanics and advanced theoretical physics. Other people are more comfortable when they're framing under Buddhism and Hindu. I think all points are valid. I don't want to dismiss any aspect of this. But it's a question of you have to find what resonates for you, and that is, as I said, that's a deeply personal journey. So going back to, I want to start off with, we're talking about indigenous contact and indigenous expanded consciousness techniques, because I think this is all directly relevant. So touching on one of the points that we made last week, which is that all of the indigenous cultures that have come forward to state that they've had contact with extraterrestrials, this is all under the same set of circumstances. So they've all got expanded consciousness techniques or meditation techniques, and contact has been achieved off the back of that. So they all feel they have a very strong connection to nature. They all believe that the planet is sentient. So they believe that the planet is a living being, and as we mentioned last week, that this is not a new idea at all. This is simply, it mirrors what modern day Gaia theory says. It mirrors what the Hindus have believed for 4,000 years, and there's a consistent message for some contactees coming through about the importance of trying to, live in harmony with the planet and these things as well. So. For the indigenous tribes who've achieved contact, their spirituality is woven into their daily life. Okay, it's not something they just do on Sundays. It forms part of how they live their life, how they approach their day, and the things they do, the way they talk to each other, the way they interact. It's they're living it all the time, which is very similar to a lot of the faiths mentioned here. So specifically, Hindu, Buddhism, Taoism, it's very similar to those. And all of these, the indigenous people, all of those religions mentioned there, also believe in the concept of the third eye. So let's just move on now and look at examples of expanded consciousness techniques for the different indigenous peoples to see what we can learn from that. So if you look at the Native American Indians, and as we said, there are 4 specific tribes in the Native American Indians, groups that have overtly stated that they've had contact with extraterrestrials. They have 5 types of achieving expanded consciousness technique. Vision quest, which is a traditional practice where the individual seeks guidance and spiritual insight by spending time alone in nature. Now, this is very similar to something I'll talk about in a minute that the Aborigines have. So this often involves fasting and praying during this time. Fasting is if you've done Rama training, you'll know it figures into an aspect of Rama training, and Rama are a South American contact group that also have contact protocols. Sweat lodge ceremonies put you into a trance-like state. Walking meditations, this is very closely linked to conventional mindfulness techniques of walking in nature. So to kind of achieve some of the tribes in Africa, some of them in the Amazon, believe that the earth has a specific, the earth being a living being has a specific frequency. So in the same way our brain waves at different states are at certain frequency, they also believe that the earth is, how you want to describe it, vibrating, existing at a certain frequency. And with training, especially if you're walking around within nature all the time, you can, they believe, naturally teach yourself how to adjust to that frequency. And this is a message that's been come from a number of different contact groups as well. So chanting and drumming is another Native American Indian technique, and smudging involves burning sweet grass or other herbs to create smoke that's then used to cleanse and purify the body. Now, smudging is also a technique that existed for both the Druids in this country, and I believe that the Aborigines have a version of that as well. So let's move on and let's now have a quick look at what the Aboriginal expanded consciousness techniques. Again, so the Aborigines have the Aborigines version of Vision Quest is Dreamtime. Dreamtime is the most consistently referred to expanded consciousness technique that is alleged to achieve contact with extraterrestrials for the Aborigines. But it's not their only one. They also have the deep listening, dance and song, again, not dissimilar to Native American Indians. Bush meditation is obviously the walking meditation for the Native American Indians, and smoking ceremonies again. So as you can see, a lot of aspects of their cultural, spiritual practices mirror the Native American Indians, and these are all they're citing as techniques that help achieve an expanded state of consciousness, which is where and how the contact is stemming from. Now I'm going to come on now and talk about energy work. Now this is challenging to talk about for the simple reason that many people in the West will look at this and just automatically assume that this is a load of woo-woo garbage. Nothing could be further from the truth. The emergent scientific information that is coming out relating to yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, Reiki is nothing short of mind-blowing. There's an area now of quantum physics that's being referred to as quantum biology, which, as I've mentioned before, deals with energy exchange at a subatomic level. This is ultimately providing what will no doubt be the basis for scientific evidence to support the fact that this energy work is very, very real. So really, what is energy work? Yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, and Reiki. Very simply, it's exercises linked with specific timed breathing and visualization. Now that's maybe doing it a disservice, breaking it down and summing it up that simply, but it really is that simple. So the exercises, you have to memorize them first. They have to become part of muscle memory. You then have to memorize the breathing properly and the visualization. And if you don't do this all properly, you might as well just be doing gymnastics because it would just not be done correctly. So what is this energy work actually achieving within the body, and how does this all relate to contact? Well, again, there is emergent science, but if I can give you a very, very, I suppose it would be a very crass analogy to give you an indication. If in the same way that if you get a blocked nose, if you've got a cold and you have a blocked nose, you've got a tried and tested way of clearing your nose so you can breathe again. Well, you blow your nose, and so what you're doing is you are forcing air at speed in volume into a cavity to clear it. That's what you do when you blow your nose. Now, what energy work is effectively doing is it's forcing energy very quickly and in a large volume through the components that exist in your etheric form. Now, whatever you want to call them, again, this isn't woo-woo stuff. This is very, very real, and we'll come on and talk a little bit about the science about it in a minute. But the fact is that you have these components. Now, in the Hindu faith, they're referred to as chakra. In Taoism, they're referred to Dantian. But it's the idea that you have these energy centers throughout your etheric form, but they can get blocked. So effectively, there is an idea that through meditation you can unblock those yourself. However, if you do energy work, it's kind of like blowing your nose. You just force energy through it, you unclear, you unblock very quickly indeed. And it then makes meditating much, much easier. So that is basically the principle behind it. Now, I incorporate every day 10 minutes of Qigong. And my day is not complete if I haven't done that, and you can feel it. What you will feel physiologically when you crack this nut is you feel like you've got a hell of a lot more energy than you have. You can feel parts of your body that you weren't really aware of beforehand. Specifically, you'll feel things like the principle of the third eye. You'll feel energy in certain parts of your body, and it really is an unmistakable feeling. So the reason that this is important in the context of your work is because the emergent science around this is nothing short of staggering. First and foremost, I think before we started the recording, we were talking briefly about the idea that the body has an electromagnetic field. Now, this is still a relatively controversial area in some parts of science, but it's increasingly the idea that there is a biomagnetic field is something that there is increasing evidence to support this idea. So, the human body generates various electromagnetic fields, including the and this is stuff that you can witness and see for yourself. If you were to use an ECG or an EEG, these fields have been measured and they're well established in scientific research. So there's no question that exists. But what's clear is that this energy work, whether you do yoga, Tao Chi, Qigong, Reiki, whatever you choose, whatever works for you, is having an effect on your electromagnetic field. Now, in terms of bioelectricity, as it says here, the body also generates electric fields through the movement of charged ions across cell membranes. This bioelectricity is essential for many physiological processes, and it can be this bioelectricity linked to salts is the reason you get muscles cramping, contracting, and things like that. Now, the real staggering piece of information here is relating to biophotons. Now, this is an idea that has been consistently proved that the body emits low levels of light or biophotons. This is a type of electromagnetic radiation. Now, again, this is verified science. Studies have shown that biophotons can be detected and measured using sensitive equipment. I've given it an example cross-section based on the science papers I've read in the course of the past couple of weeks. But they've been shown to have effects on various biological systems. And this is where you start getting into the really astounding stuff. This is what quantum biology is now starting to look at. The fact that at a subatomic level, this has a direct effect on DNA damage and repair, disease, gene expression, enzyme activity. Studies have shown that exposure to biophotons can stimulate DNA repair and enhance the activity of certain enzymes. So, as I mentioned before, the sheer volume of papers I found on this is really quite astounding. But the most amazing thing here, and the reason why this is all so important for contact work, is the fact that uh, here are there have been basically, I think it's about 5 studies conducted now on Tai Chi and yoga have demonstrated there is a massive increase in the production of biophotons given off in the body as a direct result. And this is really being clearly seen. Now, the way that you can perceive these biophotons, by the looks of things, there is a camera that exists, a certain type of camera. So potentially the tech is handheld. So there might be further down the line the possibility that we can accurately assess team members to see what their biophoton emissions are like, because I suspect this is the reason some people are having experiences with multidimensional or interdimensional beings, because those beings can see them much more easily, because their bodies are giving off a high number of biophotons. Now, this potentially could be game changing for us, but this is increasingly what this early science, and bear in mind that with a lot of these scientific papers, they all say, look, we know there's something there, but it needs more research. The scientific papers I do need to point this out from a credibility point of view. The scientific papers that have been done about the biophoton emissions relating to Tai Chi and yoga, there was no control group with these experiments, and from a scientific point of view, that's a bit of a no-no. But you have to say that this information is fairly overwhelmingly consistent. So I would suggest that even if they had a control group there, I think they'd probably be looking at exactly the same findings. So this is the theory now, that if you do energy work, Tai Chi, yoga, Reiki, I do Qigong. Qigong is great, or a mixture of all of them, you are potentially making yourself more visible to multidimensional or interdimensional beings. That, I think, is a credible theory, and I think we as a community should start to explore that more. This is the reason when you start to do the serious research about this, you realize that all these yogic masters, all these Tai Chi masters, the Buddhist monks in Tibet are all actively coming out now saying, look, sorry, we've either had experiences with extraterrestrials or multidimensional, interdimensional beings. Sagdaru particularly has got an astounding story about uh, being with a group of people in a monastery in Tibet, and encountering an interdimensional, multidimensional being. And this being was, they managed to, I think my understanding is they managed to bind it with, within yoga, they teach you how to manipulate prana. The same basic principle is chi within Tao Chi, so you manipulate chi energy, which is also prana. They managed to bind an interdimensional being into or around a woman who had a cup of water on her head, and this interdimensional being proceeded to boil the water in the cup on the woman's head. So this is all stuff which is now, from what I can make out, there is emergent information and potential science coming out to justify or provide an explanation around this. So moving on, going back to this point, so that's energy work. If you can build in energy work 10 minutes to 20 minutes a day on top of meditation, and you will after a while start to see some results from this. So these two guys, let's spend a bit of time talking about these two now. For those that don't know, the guy on the right is Mr. Wim Hof. Wim Hof is got the Wim Hof technique, which is, again, it's another type of expanded consciousness technique which concentrates on sort of breathing and breathing cycles. Now, this is all quite famous, but what most people don't understand is that Wim Hof is another example. It's another way of achieving an expanded state of consciousness. So it's all directly relevant. Now, the Wim Hof method is a set of breathing and cold exposure techniques, and the method is based on 3 pillars: breathing exercises, cold exposure, and commitment. So it involves basically controlled hyperventilation, which a person takes a series of deep breaths followed by a period of breath holding. Now, this breathing is something you'll also see mentioned by the guy on the left. Now, the guy on the left is Mr. Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza is really kind of a neuroscientist who is now exploring a combination of breathing techniques. I mean, really, his big game-changing thing. I think you mentioned earlier that I think somebody's wife is already doing this. And I know a number of people that have done the Joe Dispenza stuff, and people that have done it generally swear by it, but it does cost quite a bit of money. Now, in terms of what it actually does, he's come up with something. Joe Dispenza has come up with something which he refers to as neuroplasticity meditation. So, whereas I would see Wim Hof as more of potentially his breathing stuff is very closely linked to yoga, some yogic breathing practices. I would see a lot of his stuff as potentially energy work, whereas Joe Dispenza's, he does some breathing stuff, but I would see it's more as meditation. Now, neuroplasticity meditation, which is what Joe Dispenza has created, is based on principles within neuroscience, quantum physics, and epigenetics. And his technique involves three main components: focused attention, bringing your attention to a specific object or idea, such as your breath or positive affirmation; emotional regulation, so this involves consciously shifting your emotional state from one of stress or negativity to positivity and gratitude; and visualization. Visualizing your goal. This is all sort of fairly standard stuff in the American business self-help world. Um, but yeah, so these two guys are something you might also want to explore, and a lot of people are swearing by some of these techniques. This is my go-to. I absolutely love Deepak Chopra. This guy works for me. I find he's got a tremendously soothing voice. He's done something brilliant. I should really recommend you all try if you get the opportunity. It's called the 21-day abundance meditation challenge, and for 21 days straight, he's trying to get you to reframe things in your own life in a very much more positive manner. And for 21 days straight, he has what is basically between a 12 to 15-minute long recording, and you can go and see all of these on YouTube for free. And I would encourage you to do it all. It is fantastic. And effectively, he is from a Hindu background, so he has come up with what is effectively 7-minute long mantra meditation. So he gives you what the word is that you've got to repeat over and over in your own mind, and then you just, the bell rings, and then he brings you out of it after 7 minutes, and you just keep repeating the mantra. Now, again, why is mantra meditation any good? Well, it's really very simple. One of the biggest challenges most people have when they try and meditate is trying to what's called calm the monkey mind. You're trying to avoid thinking, and it takes. I'll be really honest. It took me probably the better part of about 3 years to master it properly. And then once I did, I never really looked back. But one of the steps on the way to that for me personally was something like Deepak's work. So once you understand that, what the mantra meditation does is it stops you from thinking. So you're constantly concentrating on repeating this phrase over and over, which is invariably for Deepak stuff. It's stuff in Sanskrit. There's Sanskrit meditation mantras. But for when you look at something like transcendental meditation, those words they're words that are given to you for the purpose of chanting them in your own mind, but they are meaningless words that have no basis of meaning at all within the English language, and that's deliberate, so that you don't go off and your mind doesn't sort of fixate on them and go off somewhere else. So there's a different types of meditation. Now, this is a guy who's very, very important, and for some of you who are going to be listening to this, this person particularly will be game changing and potentially change your life. This is Robert Monroe. Now, Robert Monroe is someone that was an American author. He was best known for his work in the field of consciousness exploration and out-of-body experiences. In the 1950s, Monroe began experiencing spontaneous out-of-body experiences, which led him to conduct extensive research into the phenomenon. He's written a number of books. One of them, a very good one, is Here on the Right, Journeys Out of the Body. That was a big favorite on a lot of coffee tables in the 1970s. In 1971, Monroe founded the Monroe Institute, which was a research center dedicated to exploring altered states of consciousness and promoting personal development. Now, the Institute exists to this present day. It's got a number of different programs and products that it offers people. courses and one-offs, including what's called the Gateway Voyage program. And this aims to help individuals achieve an expanded state of consciousness and develop greater self-awareness as a result. So it remains a leading center. But the most interesting thing about the Monroe Institute is the fact that in the early 1980s, the Gateway process was developed by Robert Monroe and funded by the US Army. Now, the US Army was initially fascinated by this sort of exploration of consciousness because they wanted to explore whether or not A, there was any possibility it might be used as a battlefield technology, or B, if it couldn't be used as a battlefield technology, could it be used for surveillance or counter-surveillance purposes? Now, this very much helped give rise to a movement in the 1980s that was also co-funded by Stanford University in the United States, which became known as the psychic spying psychic spies. There's a great film if you get a chance to watch it. I think it's free on Amazon Prime at the moment, called Third Eye Spies. Really recommend you go and watch that. It's quite fascinating. It deals with some of the Stanford University funded research into something called remote viewing, and also, they took it further to astral projection. But really, this is quite key. So the Gateway process itself that Monroe created, that was backed by the US Army, involves a series of audio exercises that use sound patterns and binaural beats to help the listener achieve a state of deep relaxation and altered consciousness. Now, the exercises are designed to gradually lead the listener to deeper levels of awareness, with the ultimate goal being to achieve a state of expanded awareness, or a gateway state. This is why it's called the Gateway process. The program is often associated with the concept of astral projection. Now, for those that don't know, you've got normal meditation, then you've got remote viewing. Remote viewing is the idea that you can, your consciousness is still staying in your body, but you're viewing out, potentially through the third eye, and you can look through, across the universe. You could look at different planets. You can look back in time. But that is all, staying with your body. The principle of astral projection is even more profound, and it's the fact that your consciousness can actively, at will, and with training, leave your body. Now, this is what Robert Monroe experienced. Now, physics tells us that energy is not constrained by time or by space. So, when the energy source that powers your body, whatever you want to call that, be it your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, whatever word you're comfortable with, when that separates from your physical form, it's not constrained by time or by space. So the theory is there that it can go anywhere. If you want to go across the universe, look at what's on Pleiades or Orion. If you want to go back in time and witness the birth of Christ, these are all theoretical possibilities, because physics tells us that energy isn't constrained by time or by space. So the ultimate goal of the Gateway process was to take someone up these different levels of consciousness and potentially out into a full out-of-body experience. So that's called OBE, but astral projection is a term that has been, I think, the Buddhists first used it. But again, it's this idea that consciousness can leave the body. Now, Monroe described the Gateway process as a tool for personal exploration. So he didn't view it like the US military did, that it could be used as an opportunity as a surveillance or counter surveillance. But that didn't stop it from that was a perceived application of it. Now, in the files section of the CE5 UK Facebook group, and also if you download our app and look in the secret files or documents section, you will find this document. Now, this is in 1983. The US Army's Intelligence and Security Command commissioned a report on the Gateway process, which was conducted by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne M. McDonnell. This is the report. We've got a copy of it. It's sitting in our files section. The report was classified at the time. It was declassified a few years ago. You can get it on the internet now, so you can have a look at this. And it outlined the theory and the methods of the Gateway process and evaluated its potential for military applications. The report basically concluded that the Gateway process had potential as a tool for enhancing soldiers' mental and physical abilities, but it also noted that further research was needed to fully understand its benefits and limitations. So the US Army, off the back of the gateway process, perceived that there was clearly something happening to consciousness that was verifiable within science. Now, that brings us up to the present day, and basically, let me just pause that. So the Monroe Institute now in the States has got a technology, and they've got a variety of different new programs, but HemiSync is something that anyone in any CE5 team might want to explore, because it's a patented audio technology. And basically the way it works is you're playing two different sound frequencies into your mind, through each ear, and this serves to push you into an expanded conscious state. The people that have used this, people swear by it. It is incredibly powerful, but it's something that you have to build up to. And anybody that's used either the gateway process or HemiSync, I think there are free versions of it on YouTube. Now, the trick with Gateway and with HemiSync is you need a really good pair of headphones, because these frequencies are being played in such a way that you need a very expensive pair of headphones to actually play the frequencies properly. But once you do, uh, this will really floor you. It is mind-blowing. If you struggle with meditation, this could well be the technique that's right for you, but you won't know until you try it. So I would really encourage you to give this a go. So moving quickly on to protocols now. So obviously, I'm sure most of you have got Dr. Greer's app now. His expanded consciousness technique on there is a great place to start. It's really easy to use. You just hit the button and it takes you through all 5 steps. It also includes basically you're supposed to broadcast the crop circle tones through a radio. We've covered the radio contact modality in our training, so it is something that you might want to have a look at. Here's our thing. We've got a ton of different. We've got 3 different versions of our protocol: beginner, medium, intermediate, and advanced. Advanced actually incorporates Tao Chi or yoga into halfway through, before you go into the sort of the CTS section. Again, I wouldn't start with the advanced. I would give, the beginner is really easy to pick up. It's designed to be used alongside a Greer protocol. The intermediate, I think, incorporates the crop circle tones, and the advanced is including energy work as well in there. So I think I covered last week the importance of creating a CTS video. CTS stands for Coherent Thought Sequencing. In a nutshell, all that means is it's part of the CE5 protocol, and what it basically does is every member of the team has to memorize this or the equivalent of this for your location. So you just go away and you create a video on Google Earth, zooming into your location from space, and you're memorizing that, and you're visualizing it back out to get potential contact, to basically show your ET friends where you are. So you're visualizing that, they pick up on that telepathically, they zero in, and they vector into your location. So this is using Luton Airport as an example. So you would just memorize that for your location, and it's easy to do. You just create something. You can create it on the Google Earth mobile app, and then disseminate it on WhatsApp, get everyone to memorize it before the day, and that's that job done. Etiquette, new team members. Not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. It's just a very brief one tonight, but one of the biggest challenges across the UK we've had is trying to integrate new team members. When your group forms, one of the things you've got to bear in mind is you very quickly develop very close bonds with people. It's very easy at that stage to end up inadvertently creating a clique. So you've always got to be mindful of the potential that there'll be new people who might want to join your team. That really is a decision for the team. If you want to take new people in, that's wonderful. But equally, what you might want to do is you might want to keep the dynamic of the team. Some of the teams in the UK now are not taking new team members, and that's because they're starting to have more and more profound contact experiences. Now, I don't want to disclose what some of those are, because that is very personal to some of those teams, and if they want to come forward and share that information publicly, that's their prerogative. I'm not going to undermine them by talking about what their contact experiences are. But what is invariably happening is that those teams, if they stay together, they could keep training the contact, and they're committed to personal improvement and meditating every day, doing this energy work, the contact experiences become more and more profound. So you might decide you've got to go down one or two routes here. Either you can let new team members in which case you're going to have to consider, how do you get them to come in? How do you balance that new dynamic, the new team dynamics, without upsetting, the what you've got with the team going on at the moment. You've also got to prepare yourself for people that might come in if you do want to have an influx of new team members. Sometimes, some parts of the country, this works really well. But sometimes you get really dominant people who want to push their own agenda onto you, or have got big ego, or other those things. So you're going to have to deal with all of those in time. I've always found the best way is just be patient with people. Invariably, if people come across as pushy to start off with, sometimes it's insecurity and just, they don't know people, so they feel they have to present themselves in a certain way. I generally find, with patience, you can get around a lot of these things. But always make sure that you've agreed on the goals and agenda of the team, and that any new team member comes in subscribes to that. They've got so many people at the moment. I'm not criticizing it at all. I think it's wonderful that so many people are setting up podcasts, YouTube channels, creating digital content for social media, getting the word out. I think that's all really positive stuff. But quite often what you're finding is that people, if they've got a channel or something and they're trying to push this constantly, it can be a bit wearing for the rest of the team. So just be mindful. Everybody's trying to create social media content these days, but if that's got the blessing of a team, wonderful. Go for it. Okay, next week we're going to be dealing with what to do if you have an experience. We're going to be talking about the reporting experiences and the reporting form we've devised. Most people don't realise this. We've got a reporting form that was devised in conjunction with retired police officers. At the time, we inadvertently thought that we would need a load of information to come out of that to stand up in a court of law. But several years down the line, no one's taken us to court, so it doesn't really matter having it being able to stand up in a court of law. But it's still a bloody good reporting form, and the police expertise that we drew from to be able to understand little things like debriefing a witness. Those are all really useful skills to have. So we'll cover that next week. About trying to preserve your sense of objectivity if you have an experience is very important. You have to go through a screening exercise to try and debunk the material that you've got, because you can guarantee if you put it out there, other people will try and debunk it. So you've got to get there first, and we'll teach you. We'll go through that process with you next week. And just to remind you again, we talked about energy work tonight. Kevin Kane, Sifu Kevin Kane, great mate of mine, is going to be giving a free course on Tao Chi and Qi Gong. He's given me the basis. I've got my 10-15 minutes I do a day is all down to Sifu Kane. He's fantastic. They're really easy to do. You'll feel a practical benefit of it immediately, and it's really easy to pick up. So he's going to be doing that for free in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, and now I think we're ready. If anyone's got any, I've tried to keep that fairly punchy tonight. Has anybody got any questions? Oh yeah, I've got to unmute you. That might be. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, let me bring that up. And okay, right. I think now you can all turn your mics on. How's that? Can anyone? No? Oh, bum. Okay. Try that. Nothing? Okay, try that now.
That's better.
Hey.
Got there eventually.
Oh.
So yeah, go for it. Anyone, just fire away if you've got any questions.
Oh, thought somebody else was going to speak then.
You go, Neil.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Okay. Hemisync, James. What do you get more information about the Hemisync?
Yeah, well, it's Hemisync is a product of the Monroe Institute. So this is the sound-based stuff. As I said, you need a decent pair of, if you're going to do this stuff, you've got to invest in a decent pair of headphones, because if just a crappy little pair of plugins will probably not cut it. But when you do this, it really is quite astounding. It does work. It's extraordinarily powerful. Make sure you're in a relaxed environment if you're going to mess around with this. And you know, people swear by the astral projection stuff is really quite astounding. So it's definitely worth giving it a go. But yeah, I mean, it's all up on the generally these days. I think the Monroe Institute, they've got their own app, so you can download their app. Usually for free on the either iOS, the App Store, or on the Google Play Store, and then they give you the option of you being able to get the programs from it. I think Apple headphones are good enough for the Monroe Institute stuff.
I doubt it.
Really?
Which is why I was holding up my other AKJs, which are far superior than. The only Apple ones that I would recommend are the most expensive ones that they make, or the Pro Beat ones, because they're closed cup headphones. So I think what you mean is something like
Have
these
you done it,
beauties.
Neil? Have you tried it?
Sorry,
have you tried it?
I haven't yet. No, but I'd like to give it a try. But I'd like to give it a try with these, which are my son gave me these. These are £200 headphones. Okay, they're wireless, but I could also plug them in wired to a device as well, which is something that might try. Well, I'll use it wirelessly.
I mean, I'm no expert on speakers, but I mean, when I was working with
that's where
the other thing to
that's where my previous
the other thing to bear in mind is that we when I was putting together the CE5 UK protocol, we incorporated all the stuff about binaural beats into our protocol to try and, you know, achieve that effect. So Mike has cut the audio properly, and it's got the binaural beats. It's also got the solfeggio frequencies in there as well. But I do think the sound stuff works, but it's just a question of again, it's, as I keep stressing, this is, you've got to find, you know, outside of the C5 protocol, you've got to find what works for you. And there's a big trial and error process with this, and what works for one person might not necessarily work for you. But a lot of people do swear. A lot of people that struggle to meditate swear by the Monroe Institute stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the solfeggio frequencies. I've had a look at those myself. Personally, I don't believe in them at all. Considering
we'll agree to differ there, Neil, because I've seen evidence that has convinced me about those. So
really,
you know, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, those are linked to the frequency that's linked to the stuff that all the indigenous tribes saying, which is that they believe that the earth, for example, is at a certain frequency. So the solfeggio frequencies incorporate all those different frequencies. So you know, there's one to connect with the earth. There's another one to heal DNA. You know, and as I said, I mean, I keep coming back to the same point, which is that you know, our existing understanding of science is highly likely to be extremely primitive. So we can't rule things out. And the problem is that we are conditioned to have an opinion about a lot of this stuff. Well, the science that's coming out now is saying something else. So yeah, I mean, but fair enough. I mean, it is. If it doesn't resonate for you, it doesn't resonate. But the reality is that I don't think, you know, I think this is down to people have got to get out there and find out what resonates for them. But in my experience, I think it all works.
Well, they state with the most of these that they have individual frequencies, and the trouble is that they don't have individual. What they appear to have is a range of frequencies around that possibly that one frequency.
I mean, that's what Monroe's state, though. That and if you look at any neuroscience paper about brainwave frequencies, they say that a lot of these states intersect. And it's not that simple that something is at a certain frequency all the time. It's a wave. It's going up and down. It's constantly moving. So but I absolutely trust in the Indigenous theories on this. I have to say, I completely trust them. But yeah, so any other takers? Yeah, Mike, go for it.
Yeah, it was around the whole topic of people finding what works for them. Obviously, the bigger the group, the wider the range of possible methods that work for different people. I was just wondering, in a group environment, is there more power in everyone doing the same thing, or is it better to allow people to do their own thing simultaneously?
Well, I mean, this is it. I would never try imposing stuff on a group. I would always encourage them to have a chat about it and see what works for them. I mean, you might find that I think that in the short term, what you probably find is that what people are trying to achieve here is trying to actually genuinely achieve that expanded conscious state. So you'll find that people are motivated either by ease of use. There's so many people now. I mean, the problem is we've got so many electronic devices all over there, everywhere, that people have got generally quite short attention spans. So the problem is, I think a lot of people struggle with meditation because everyone's got the internal chatter going on, and that's quite difficult. It takes a hell of a long time to get rid of that. So for most people, I think what you're going to find is something like transcendental meditation or this Monroe stuff might well be the quickest route up the mountain. But I would just the trouble is that some of this carries a price tag as well. That's the other thing to bear in mind is that Monroe stuff is very good, but there's a cost attached. It's not astronomical, I think they have a program which is about anything between £7 to £10 a month, and I don't think you have to sign up for a year or anything. So people could do it for a couple of months just to try it. Similarly, to do transcendental meditation properly, I mean, this is the thing. It's like a lot of things. If you really want to do something properly, you have to get a good teacher. The problem with talking about yoga and Tai Chi and stuff is that there's a hell of a lot of people out there that claim that they're teachers, when actually, it's a potential cash cow for them. And are they any good? Maybe not. And as I said before, if you're not doing it properly, you might as well just be doing gymnastics. It's a complete waste of time. So, but if you do it properly, you will absolutely feel it. You will feel it physiologically in your body. It's absolutely unmistakable. And as I said, the science there is that it's increasing the biophotons your body's giving off. So, on that basis, it then all of a sudden it makes perfect sense for the fact that you've got Sagdaru coming forward saying experiences with this. You've got Christ the Dalai Lama came forward 7 or 8 months ago as well. A lot of these top line mystic gurus are now all coming forward and saying the same thing. So if you embrace that science about the biophotons, then this energy work's definitely worth doing. But you've got to get a good teacher.
The yoga master that you're talking about is
Sagdaru. Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Okay, bear with me. I will just go and Sadhguru. And he is. You can go and watch. He did a really good one on Joe Rogan.
Okay. Because I guess what I learned from doing yoga a long time ago was the importance of engaging the bandhas, which is like the root lock and then the abdominal lock. And I think that ties in somewhere with what I was learning about some of the pineal meditations in kind of driving what they were describing the cerebrospinal fluid up.
Yeah, that's the Joe Dispenza stuff. Yeah.
So whether or not it's physical fluid or energy or whatever it is
I saw that somebody shared about this the other day, and just suggesting that it's just energy. But you know, it's quite confusing, because when you start to listen to some people who've gone on the advanced course for the Joe Dispenza stuff, which he charges a fortune for, the way it's described is almost like you're forcing fluid up your spinal column and firing it straight into pineal gland, and it breaking up the calcification. So it's challenging. But I mean, it's just the sort of thing. You just have to carry on sharing information. The Curlian emanations. How do you mean, Martin?
I was asking about biophotons. Can you see them yourself?
There's 5 different ways of assessing biophotons. Hang on one second. Okay, bear with me.
Thank you for asking that, Martin, because I'd forgotten that I wanted to ask that.
Okay, so the biophoton stuff.
So
There's so many notes. I read through so many papers. This is ridiculous. Hang on one second. Yeah, it was on one of the slides. Let me just go back and get that. Are you still watching this screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just go. Okay, there are. Here we go. Okay, so on this slide, the equipment that you can use to measure them are photo multiplier tubes, charge coupled devices, which there is a charge coupled camera that exists to take photos, and it will show you biophotons coming off. Single photon avalanche diodes. The problem is that some of this kit is designed for assessing biological samples in labs. So of the one that's most likely to be, as I mentioned earlier on, a handheld device, there is someone who developed a camera, charge coupled device camera, which you can take photos of people to get biophotons coming off. So that is, but I mean, really, to be honest, it's more a question in the short term of just trying to master the techniques. I think once you've got an entire team that after about 6 months have mastered some of these energy techniques, that's at that point that you're going to try and pull out neuroscientists and physicists to come and measure and track this properly. If we can provide any data in the short term, but really, I mean, but also take a step back at this point, because the types of experience that you would have where you would come into contact with an interdimensional, multidimensional being. Bear in mind, we are talking about something that's previously been more classified under the paranormal, spirit, supernatural banner than specifically extraterrestrial contact. The CE5 stuff, people have reported these sort of multidimensional, interdimensional beings in their house when they've done CE5 protocols in their house by themselves or with a couple of people. So it's in that context that it works. In the group context out in the field, you know, that's when you're more likely to see orbs, etc. But you know, the people have reported all kinds of experiences off the back of this, and you know, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to find a way of describing, especially when stuff falls outside of the 5 senses. So, for example, if 5 people on a fieldwork team experienced a feeling of extreme pressure in their head and on their chest, well, that's falling outside the 5 senses. So it's very difficult to describe. But if you're, you know, if you've done a lot of this other training, then you might actually be able to perceive it in a different manner. But again, this is still, you know, we're all still learning here. It's very difficult to know how to describe this or frame a lot of this stuff.
Thank you, James.
Pleasure. Well, I've got to go and put my one of my kids to bed now. So, guys, thank you very, very much for your time. And yeah, we'll do the final one of these on probably Monday, Tuesday next week. And I'll cover all the reporting stuff. Neil, you'll know a lot about that because you helped devise some of this stuff, the reporting stuff. This was going back a couple of years now, wasn't it? So, you're good. Right.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much for your time.
See ya.
Thanks, James.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.